What's up? Hope everyone's having a good day and is ready for another video in the series we like to call Underrated Throwers. Today we got Christian Cantwell. I want to do a video on him because the more I think about it, the more I think he's very underrated. And I know like what a lot of the shot put community would say is that, oh, he's like a top 25 best thrower in history, one of the best throwers ever, one of the most famous throwers ever. But I just think there's a lot of things that a lot of throwers, especially newer throwers nowadays, do not understand about Christian Cantwell. Because you'll look at his technique and we'll play it now, and you're like, oh, he doesn't really use his legs, it's just all arms. And it's like, oh, well, if Christian Cantwell could throw over 2250 like this and become a world champion and an Olympic silver medalist, then why can't I? Well, one, you're not 6'8". 2, you don't bench like 700 plus pounds. And 3, you're not Olympic level you don't have Olympic level athleticism. Alright? So Christian Cantwell throws like this, one, because he has a bunch of knee injuries. He's had a lot of knee injuries in the past, so it's hard for him to get low. And another thing, he doesn't really need to. He hits the bare minimum requirements to throw far. And I can't stand it when people are like, oh, but he just throws his legs. Because, I'm sorry, you guys are just idiots. But that's not why I think he's underrated. I think he's underrated because a lot of people don't know that he's had like a 75-foot foul. But it was like barely a foul. He reversed... He reversed in the ring, and literally the tippy top of his toe hit this part. There's a video of it on YouTube, and an interview where he talks about it. And if he just, at the end, just reversed a little bit more, and just like kept turning a little bit more, he would have saved it. And he would have become the first thrower since like the 80s to throw over 75 feet. It wasn't quite the world record, but I'm pretty sure it was like 2305 or something like that. I mean, it's 75 feet. 75 something. I forget what it was. I think it's like 75.4 or something. There's a video on YouTube. This isn't that video. This is a video of him throwing 2235. In my opinion, one of my more favorite throws from him. For those of you who do not know who Christian Cantwell is, first of all, you guys need to do some research because he's one of the throwers that I grew up watching. Because I'm old, I guess. Or I guess I'm considered old. So he was predominantly... So I consider a big... How do I explain this? I like to call the Big Three era in shot put, which was like the early 2000s to the early 2010s. So it was Reese Hoffa, who I've done a video on, Adam Nelson, who's probably the most famous one because he won an Olympics, and then Christian Cantwell, who has actually thrown the furthest out of all of them. I'm pretty sure Adam Nelson's PR is 22.51, and then Christian Cantwell's is 22.54. I'll put all his accomplishments and personal best and height and weight in the video description. But to me, like, the stuff that Christian Cantwell has done, like his furthest throw ever is like 22.70 in practice. From like an interview, he's probably thrown further than that. But I think he's the definition of a power thrower. I've explained this in a different video, like a momentum-based thrower, like a normal thrower, and then a power thrower. And normal thrower is just like kind of like a Ryan Krauser, if you will. Actually, more like a Joe Kovacs. And that's more like a regular thrower. He uses momentum and power. Christian Cantwell is what I define as a power thrower. And a lot of taller people, so like Ryan Krauser, Christian Cantwell, I consider power throwers, and you'll see why in a little bit. So, and also I think he's very unique in the fact that he's very tall for a rotational shot putter. Most shot putters, except for Ryan Krauser, that are this tall are gliders. But he chose the rotational route, and thank God he did. But there are two distinct differences between... Well, there are a couple distinct differences between Christian Cantwell's technique and Ryan Krauser's technique. And it's the different ways they approach it. So, like, you see Christian Cantwell, he stays really high in his legs. Starts kind of narrow. And you see Ryan Krauser starts wider. And really likes to stay lower to the ground and catch super deep. So, there is two different ways. When you stand taller, when you're this tall, you can sprint. Where Ryan Krauser doesn't really sprint because he chose the lower route. Like, he sprints, but not that much, because if he was going to, he would fall out of the ring. Like, he would just fall out the front of the ring. That's why you see people his size and Christian Cantwell's size tend to throw discus, because it's like a foot longer of a ring. So, but we'll get into Christian Cantwell. Oh, another thing why I think he's very underrated is that when people think of like the best shot putters ever, like a lot of people don't say Christian Cantwell, and I'm actually very surprised about that. Because, yeah, he's not the best shot putter ever, but he might be top 10. He's top 10 for me. Maybe that's biased because I grew up watching him, and he's my least favorite out of the big three, but I mean, I gotta give him his flowers. I mean, I think he's also like an indoor world champion, but I mean, that too. But I'll link all that stuff in the video description. That just came to mind. But yeah, I just think he's super underrated. I don't think a lot of younger throwers, which is mainly why I'm doing this series, is for like the younger generation who may not know about all these throwers I'm talking about. And I know people have done videos of like some of the throwers I'm talking about, but I try to do videos, like video analysis of people that I've never seen anybody do before. Now, obviously, people have done videos on Christian Cantwell and like Reese Hoffa and some other guys that I've done. But people like Joakim Olsen and RG Harju and surprisingly Ishan Adati, Julius Yago, Lawrence Okoye. I've never seen people do videos on them. So, but even some of the most popular throwers ever, I think sometimes do not get the flowers they get. And I think people nowadays will look, because we live in like the golden era of shot put. I mean, it's crazy what shot putters are doing now. But we have to remember that the big three kind of laid the foundation to what shot put is now. You know, you could see remnants from Tom Walsh and Adam Nelson. You can see big similarities between them. You know, Reese Hoffa and Joe Kovacs, you can see similarities. Ryan Krauser, Christian Cantwell, you can see very big similarities, especially in their finish. You know, it's like they've laid the foundation for a lot of throwers, and they've inspired a lot of throwers, including me, to throw. So I gotta give them their flowers. I probably won't do a video on Adam Nelson unless you guys want to. I was gonna make one on John Godina, but I have a feeling that everyone knows who he is. I mean, if you guys want an analysis on John Godina, I can do that. But I mean, if you don't know who John Godina is, whew, you guys need to up your game right there, because he's arguably a top 5 shot putter ever when you just think of all that he's accomplished. But let's get into this analysis. I'm actually trying to get into the analysis kind of quick, even though it's been 10 minutes. So, whatever. So, something I don't really talk about a lot, and maybe Christian Cantwell isn't the right person to really talk about this because he can't really see it that well, is the way he gets over his left. Now, normally people like to shift a little more. He doesn't take that approach. He does shift. But people usually like to think about like this whole left side shifting that way. That is true. But I think people tend to over exaggerate how much you actually need to get over your left. It's more important that you put weight on your left. Because if you shift too much, one, it can lead to imbalance. Two, it can make you pick your sweep leg up too soon. And two, if you put too much weight on your left foot, it will just stop turning. So you need to find the right balance. So you don't want to put nothing on it, but you want to put enough. So if you were in like a slippery ring or throwing in the rain, you wouldn't slip. So if you want to think about it like that, and you can test it by just, if there's no rain, just pour water into the ring. And you can tell really quickly if you're not over your left, because if you're not over your left, you will slip. So that's something you can check to see if you're on your left. Another thing you can do if you're taking video is just see armpit, knee, and that's a bad line. Armpit, knee, heel, all in line. Now, normally, what you would want is this left knee to drop a lot more. So it should be, normally it would be like here. But he doesn't really drop it that much, just because, again, his knee problems. So, I mean, if you look at there's some videos of him from college, he gets so much deeper in the throw. If anything, I kind of like his technique in college better. I don't think the finish was as nice, but the back and the middle looks so much better. In my opinion, it looked more conventional, I will say. But, I mean, and then I think after college he started developing knee problems, which happens when you're like, I'm assuming he's like around 350, 6'8". So, you know, inevitably when you're that big, you're going to get some knee problems. It's just kind of unavoidable. But knee problems and knee injuries are something else, and you can always do things to prevent. But it's very common for throwers at this kind of weight, and just throwers in general, one of the first things that goes is your knees. It's usually your knees, your back, or your wrist for shot put. And then maybe your ankle. So it's just something to be aware of, and you just got to make sure that you're doing proper rehab and all that to avoid it. But sometimes, you know, just freak accidents happen. So, and those, I mean, are accidents. Can't avoid them, but you can do your best to avoid them. So let's get back to the analysis. It gets weight over the left, stays tall. One thing I really like from Cantwell is how long he keeps his sweep leg on the ground. So left leg pointed there, right leg still on the ground. And I really like how his right knee goes out and around. Out, around. Really quick left heel. And you'll notice, so he winds the left heel high and then puts it low. And I really like that because when you go from high to low, now you notice his heel isn't touching the ground, but it goes lower. That really keeps him from, one, standing up even more and extending this knee. Two, it helps accelerate your heel faster. And then three, it helps you from not breaking your hip. Because if your heel is too high, you're going to have your left heel, I should say. you'll have a tendency to break at the hip. And this is something I'm actually working on in my throw, and it's actually helping a lot, is to start with the lower left heel in the back. And another thing it does is it stops over rotation. Because when your heel is lower, it's very very hard for it to turn, which is a good thing when you don't want it to turn. Usually you want a higher right heel in the middle of the ring, because you want that that right foot as it grounds in the middle to just keep turning the entire way. So usually I like to think low left heel at the back, high right heel in the middle, and boom. And he does a fantastic job at that. So let's get right here. Pick up, really nice sweep. I really like this left arm being aggressive, but not pulling. So a lot of people will say they want you to hold this left arm to the sector. I personally don't like that. I tend to like hold the chest to the sector rather than the left arm, because when you hold the left arm, it stops your rotational energy too soon, and it just shuts down your left side. And in my opinion, it causes you to be a little slower and a little more off balance. Whereas you see a lot of the best throwers ever, they tend to do this, where they use their left arm to be like this, and then they hold their chest while they sprint. And that's what I think you should do, rather than holding the left arm. But that's just my opinion. But I mean, you see almost all the best in the world, they do this. You know, we got Christian Cantwell go over 2250, so I mean, shoot. I mean, amongst other things, but... And this is what I'm talking about with, boom, that left heel does not move. It is super stable. It doesn't go down or up. It just, boom, right there, and it just stays there. And then he pushes off. Now, he doesn't get that much of a sprint, because he is so tall. So, this technically is a sprint, but you'll see a lot more with shorter guys that when their right foot grounds in the middle, their left foot is already like here. Oh my God, I keep doing that. Sorry. Their left foot is like here already, instead of just getting off. So if you are like 6'3" and shorter, this is not a good sprint. But because he's 6'6" and up, you know, you can only do so much in a 7-foot ring. So you can only sprint so much. But this is why he can get away with this, and it's a sweep. So he has like a Dylan Armstrong kind of throw, which in my opinion is more of a power throw, relying a lot on your mass, getting down and staying grounded as long as possible throughout the entire throw. So I tend to see this a lot more in taller people, and people that are just like really hefty or fluffy, shall we say. Hefty. More the lumberjack build, like the Dylan Romani build, whose once career is done, I might make a video of it, because I think he's severely underrated as well. But when he sweeps down, he says he's not sprinting. The reason I define a power throw is because he doesn't do a pre-turn. Because one, he doesn't sprint enough to do a pre-turn. And what I mean by a pre-turn is normally you see like shorter guys, their right toes would be pointed towards the back of the ring, and their ass would be facing the sector. But with him, his right foot is facing like this way. So what this does is it allows him to stay on his right a lot longer and just keep working the ground. So he turns a lot more on the ground than a pre-turner, because normally the pre-turner would catch here. and then they would just go here. But the reason why shorter people like to do a pre-turn is because they sprint a lot more. So it allows them to kind of turn their hips in the air. So then they don't, because this is kind of slow. But when you're powerful enough, you can get away with throwing like this. And when you're heavy enough, you can do this kind of style. So for shorter people, I tend not to teach this style. Unless you're just like an absolute behemoth or someone that isn't that fast. Normally, this tends to work for people who aren't very fast as well. This kind of style. But just like super strong. And I mean fast relative for like elite level shot putters. You know, like this throw right here. I mean, it's not the fastest throw in the world. It's fast enough to go 22:35, but I mean, Reese Hoffa and Adam Nelson are like crazy fast through the ring, but they're also like almost a foot shorter. So, I mean, they throw different, and I think it's very important to understand like the difference between how tall people throw and how smaller people throw, or shorter people, I should say. Because shorter people can do stuff the taller people can't, and the taller people can do stuff that the shorter people can't. And in general, I tend to think that being 6'3" is generally the perfect height for any throwing event. Not too short, not too tall, just perfect. If like you're a college thrower or someone that does multiple events, if you're like 6'2", 6'3", that's generally like a perfect height. And just long arms. So just keep that in mind, if you're like a new coach and you're just trying to look at throwers or like trying to recruit. But I mean also like that's not the only thing you should take in consideration. But yeah, just as a thought. So he gets in the middle. Oh, before I forget, this left arm I like too. Now, normally people would say keep the left arm long, but when you're sweeping down, you see how his sweep leg and left arm are perfectly in time with each other. So as the right leg is sweeping down, his left arm is going down. And what this does is it gets his shoulders turned and gets him to the ground faster. So boom right there, and then he holds that left arm. Keeps turning on his right. Boom, great catch. Could catch a little deeper, but I mean, this is a beautiful position. Beautiful position, really stacked. Terrible line. Shot put, hip, and heel and right heel aligned perfectly. This is when people refer to a stack, just like out the back, a middle stack, this is what I mean. Just beautiful. So you want the shot put. With the 16 pound, you tend to not want the shot put super far back, unless you're just crazy strong, or you get a lot of torque. If you're like a momentum based thrower, and rely a lot on stretch reflex, then that's more of what you want. But a power-based thrower, you don't want that much separation because you're not creating that much separation throughout the ring. So, and really, this is why I think Christian Cantwell is the definition of a power-based thrower. And it's not bad. I mean, obviously it's not bad. But it's just a different style and something you got to keep aware of. So, because not everyone can throw far like this. If I threw like this kind of style, I would not throw far because I am a little weak, puny little, B-word. So, I cannot throw like this. I've tried to throw like this. It does not work. I throw more like Tom Walsh and Adam Nelson. A lot more momentum-based and a lot more stretchy. So, you got to find what works for you. But let's get back to this. So beautiful here. And then just turn. And you see how he works the ground? No, and it's not as good as Krauser, but you notice the whole time he's pushing. And look, his right foot stops applying force right there. Bent right knee. And I think Christian Cantwell has probably a top 3 shot put block in history. I was about to say NBA history for some reason. I don't know why. This block right here is just absolutely gorgeous. Oh God! Stop doing that. Stop. Every time I move my thumb. Just one frame less. There we go. All right. Technology, not my friend. But this is a beautiful square position. So you want to try and finish as square as possible when you throw. But you notice, so the reason why you want a very good bench press, and I think Christian Cantwell probably has like a top 5 bench press ever for a shot putter, is for this exact reason right here. Is because basically he's just incline benching this at this point. The shot, if this was the head at a side view, the shot, so if this was the head, if I can draw, whatever, it doesn't mean to be straight. But if this is the head, this is the front of the ring, the shot put is already like here. It's already out of his hand, basically. If I go one frame more, if it will move, come on. God, son. No, it's at that frame. Boom. That's basically out of his hand. And you notice how he just keeps that block. Like, yeah, he's in the air. And you'll notice, you can just tell from this that his eyes are looking at the shot put. I think I mentioned this in another video. But I'm not a big fan of people holding their head when they throw shot put like a Filip Mihailovic, because I think it's a very slow way to release and not very powerful. But you want to keep your eyes on the shot put. And if you look up any still image of like a 22 plus meter shot putter, their eyes are always on the shot put. They're kind of like peeking and like kind of tilting their head a little, and like just like out of the corner of their eye they can still see the shot put. And what this does is it keeps you in full connection of the shot and keeps you pushing straight instead of turning off it. Because if he wasn't looking at the shot and his eyes were pointed that way, he would just keep rotating and wouldn't have a very strong block. So it's important to keep your eyes on it. And you can do the same thing in discus too. If you have a trouble pulling in discus, that this kind of cue works too. So if that's a problem, give it a try. But it's more of a cue in shot put. Well, it's not even a cue, it's just something you need to do, in my opinion. But it's here, boom, and he just keeps holding that. And a beautiful release. I always say, and he kind of over rotates a little on this throw. So his left foot is here, and his his right leg reverses there instead of on his left foot. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. I tend to like in most throws, if you're a right-handed thrower, I really don't like throws down this sector. It's either down the middle or this way. Just because this way, it just means you got your hips into it. Middle is like a perfect textbook throw. Down this sector, it tends to mean you either didn't turn your hips all the way, you pulled the living hell out of it, or just something else went wrong. But those two things are generally the two biggest causes of that. So that those tend to lead to a lot less throws. So I always say you can tell what you did wrong based on how you threw, based on where you threw. So like here on this throw, he over rotated on the finish. So you see how he kind of tilted a little this way instead of this. And you see how his right foot kind of tilts him a little this way. So he over rotates. So that's just something to keep in mind too. Now, on his winning world championship throw in 2009, which is probably his most famous throw, or like I think it was the 6th round or the 5th round, he clutched it up and threw like 22.09 and beat Thomas Majeski, who, spoilers, I'm going to do a video on this week because I think he's really underrated too. He finishes perfectly down the middle and he doesn't really tilt at all. So instead of his left shoulder being a little instead of his left shoulder being a little down, he's a little more square and punches a little more straight. And the reason why he's over rotating is, again, his right foot doesn't turn as well as I've seen him do in the past. So he kind of stops rotating it and pushes this way just a little bit. So it's just something to keep in mind. Even the best of the best don't have the perfect technique. But I always say the best technique is the technique that goes the furthest. Doesn't matter how ugly it is or what. What matters is, did it go far or what? So there are people with super ugly technique. Robert Fizikis comes to mind. 71-meter thrower. I've seen high schoolers with better technique than him, if I'm going to be completely honest. But I mean, shoot. Through 71 meters, can't argue with that. One of the, I think, 6th best throw in history or some stuff like that. So, man, I'm trying my hardest not to curse. I didn't realize how much I cursed. Oof. But, right here, boom, just great. So generally, you would tend to see if someone under-rotated or finished that way, it would mean their hips, and this might be exaggeration, kind of stopped here, and then they just kind of jump instead of turn. And then down the middle would be something like Krauser does, would be like if he was still turning instead of pushing up. So thinking about keeping this right knee bent, which he does do, but just a little more bent, while turning this right foot. So this whole right side would be turning in one motion instead of pushing a little bit to that side, and that would make it go down the middle. But I mean, shoot, 22.35 is nothing to laugh at. So yeah, I hope you guys like this video. He's one of my favorite throwers ever. One of the best finishes ever. And I don't think a lot of people knew that he had like a 75-foot foul. In my opinion, if he didn't have these injured knees and all that, I think he could have broke the world record. He definitely had the athleticism, the strength, the technique. But I would highly recommend watching that 75-foot foul video. And then you'll see how much of like barely a foul it was. Honestly. Like, I've seen people have been called fouls for a lot more and a lot less than his foul. So, I mean, it was a foul, but, I mean, oof. I'm not gonna lie. If I fouled like he fouled that 75-foot throw, I mean, if I fouled a 75-foot throw, I don't even know how I would react. So, more power to him. But, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed and have a good day.